how's it going? My name is Jay and welcome to the channel. Today we're back here in Planet Zoo in Sannikovland. For those of you who are new here, Sannikovland is my current project in Planet Zoo. We're focusing on building a really lovely, lush zoo in this gorgeous tropical environment featuring animals from all the different continents. And as of today, we're continuing our work on the petting zoo. If that sounds good to you, feel free to hit the subscribe button. Of course, like the video if you do enjoy what you see here. Without further ado, let's get into the video. And once again, I always say without further ado, but there usually is some further adoing to be doing. And that is something I want to talk about today before we actually start talking about the video. It's a really important thing, especially if you're watching these sorts of videos, and that is zoos in real life. Now, all of you obviously know there's been a global pandemic, and all around the world zoos are struggling at the moment because, they're not getting as many guests, if any at all, thanks to lockdowns and stuff like that. And a lot of them are struggling to keep up their finances and their, ability to take care of their animals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link in the description to sign a petition to, this is applying to the UK specifically, because I did live in the UK for a long time and the zoos there hold a special place in my heart. So I'm going to put a link down there to where you can sign a petition to urge the UK government to financially support UK zoos and kind of bail them out because they are in a rough situation not being able to open. And these petitions do help in the long term, because if they get a certain amount of votes on them, the government does have to respond, and if they get to I think it's 100,000 votes, then they will have to discuss it in Parliament. So please do sign the petition if you live in the UK, and if you do not, I urge you to also look up your local zoos and support them in any way you can. You don't have to donate if you don't have the money, but just talking about it, telling people, about the predicament that zoos are in, it's all helpful. And if you find more petitions, of course, do share them, and we'll all kind of pitch in any way we can, because they are, struggling, and we can help in any way we can. I mean, if you're watching this video, I know that you love animals and you love, zoos and stuff like that. So, that's basically it. The links will be in the description, of course. And, just let's all kind of pitch in and help in any way we can. Now that I've got that, said and done, let's talk about today's video. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be introducing another animal to our petting zoo. And this one was one that I kind of... Okay, so basically, the animal we're introducing today is probably not the best fit for a petting zoo, because it is one of the most dangerous animals on the planet. That isn't even an exaggeration. They flat out are one of the most dangerous animals out there. So, we're going to be introducing the African buffalo, essentially. They are a species of cattle, very much... here's the thing, they are a species of cattle, but they're not exactly cows. They're not very similar. They are genetically quite different. The way I wanted to introduce them into the petting zoo is to have them in their own paddock and have there be a feeding station where the buffaloes can kind of come up to where the guests are, and the guests can offer them some fruit and stuff like that. So there would be separation. It's not that the guests are going into the buffalo habitat. They are separate enough that it wouldn't be dangerous, I hope. So that's kind of my logic here. But feel free to let me know in the comments whether this is a horrible idea and whether we'd get loads of guests getting horribly injured. They're very, very cool animals, and I think they do fit the area well. A cattle species kind of fits that whole theme of a petting zoo quite well, because you can have a feeding station and people can kind of come up to it and, interact with the animals, even if it is to somewhat of a minimal extent. And as you can see on screen, the first thing we are going to be doing is building up the stable area, very similar to what we did for the camels in the 1 episode ago, something like that. We did the camel habitat, and they also had a very similar stable arrangement. So I thought that was pretty good for this petting zoo area. We wouldn't necessarily want to have a naturalistic shelter. We'd go for something more utilitarian, like these stables. And I wanted to keep with this idea that this is an older part of the zoo. It's a part that hasn't been kept up to date like the rest of the zoo. It's not as modern, but it doesn't have to be, because this is, more of a utilitarian type area, and all these animals function well in these sorts of habitats. So I thought that was a fine idea, and I think it ends up looking pretty good, today's habitat. I really quite like it. I was having a little bit of trouble building recently. I was just having a little bit of a zoo block, as I like to call it. It's like art block but for zoos. I was just I couldn't really think of what to build and stuff like that, so I was struggling a little bit. But this habitat I had a really fun time building, and I think it comes out pretty good. I still don't know how suitable this animal is for this area, but we'll go with it. We'll just kind of roll with this idea that, okay, zookeepers will be around, and the guests will be protected to an extent, and the guests are not directly entering the habitat, so it should be all good. Fingers crossed no one gets their hand bitten off or something. But I'm talking a lot about this animal. Let's actually get into the species profile for today, and we'll learn a little bit more about the African buffalo. Now, here we go. I'll just get it up on the screen. The African buffalo, our scientific name is Sincerus kaffir, or kaffir, I'm not really sure how to pronounce that, is a pretty large bovine species from Africa. So these guys are only near threatened as far as the IUCN goes. Their numbers are reducing slightly, and the reason that causes that is unfortunately there is still big game hunting for these guys. There are droughts. Climate change does affect their habitats, so there are a few different reasons. But generally speaking, they are still quite populous, which is a good thing. They are huge animals, very, very big. They can get up to a ton easily, about 3.5 meters long. They're very adaptable. They live in dry forest, grasslands, wetlands, swampy kind of areas, even rainforests, so they are very, very adaptable animals. As far as their lifespan goes, these guys get easily up to about 29-30 years in captivity, so pretty solid lifespan on these guys. And of course, as far as the diet goes, they're very similar to other bovine species. They just kind of eat grasses and leaves, just grazing. That's what they spend most of the time doing, is just grazing. And if you look at the picture on screen, or the one that was on screen, because now it's probably faded out, you'll notice there was a bird on top of the buffalo, and this is one of those kind of symbiotic relationships you do see on the African savanna a lot, where you'd have small birds that kind of pick parasites off of these larger herbivores. You see them a lot on elephants. There will be birds like oxpeckers, other smaller egrets, things like that, that have a symbiotic relationship with these animals. For example, if a buffalo were to just be walking along, it'll be trampling up the dirt, and other birds like egrets and stuff like that would come down and feed off the bugs that get tossed up whenever these buffalo walk around. So they're a pretty cool animal. It's like they carry their own micro ecosystem with them when they walk around. It's pretty cool. But yeah, let's get into some interesting facts about these guys. They're pretty cool. Like I said, they're one of the most dangerous animals in Africa, and that means they're probably one of the most dangerous animals in the world. They're responsible for a lot of deaths per year, human deaths, something like 200 I think per year. Once again, I always mention this, but I'm completely against demonizing an animal for human fatalities. Like I said, these guys are aggressive. They are extremely aggressive, which is again why I'm really unsure about keeping them here in this part of the zoo. But they're well contained, and again, guests cannot enter the habitat, so it should be okay. Fingers crossed. But very interesting animals nonetheless. So you'll have noticed that males and females have different horn shapes. The males have these almost fused horns, where both horns kind of come together in the middle and form these big kind of round protrusions, which is known as a boss. That's very much like a bit of a shield, and if they headbutt other males, that acts as a bit of a battering ram. Females have slightly smaller horns, which are a bit more separated and point backwards as opposed to the curving horns of the male. And the females are also quite a decent bit smaller. Now, buffalo herds are very known for their altruism. So the word altruism just means to help another person or another member of your group. So buffalo herds are actually very democratic to an extent. They can vote on where they go and graze. So essentially, when a big herd of buffalo is all of them are just kind of laying about, chilling, and they get hungry, what they'll do is that the buffaloes will kind of turn their heads in the direction of where they want to eat and where they want to move to. And the most buffaloes that point their head in a certain direction will kind of win out, and all the buffaloes will go that direction. So that's pretty cool. I think that's a very interesting behavior they have. They are very, very fast animals as well when they want to be. They may look lumbering, but if they charge at you, they can get up to 60 kilometers an hour. That's about 37 miles an hour. That's as fast as a lot of vehicles go. You know, you cannot outrun this animal basically, which is another reason why it's so dangerous. If it starts charging at you, you don't have very many options other than, you know, to hope for the best. They also have really great eyesight. They can spot a lion from something like half a mile away, which is like a kilometer, I think. Which is cool. Like, you know, herbivores, generally speaking, are not known for good eyesight. There's this, you might have learned this in school or college, but there's always this idea that herbivores tend to have eyes on the sides of their heads, so they have a wider field of vision, but not detailed, and not without the depth perception. Whereas carnivores have eyes on the front of their heads, so they have the depth perception to be able to judge distances. But when it comes to this buffalo, it does actually have very, very good eyesight, and it is detailed enough to make out the distance from which a predator happens to be. So if they spot a lion, they can judge, okay, that lion's that far away, we can go and avoid this now. So yeah, very cool animals. That's it for the species profile for today. I do hope you guys have learned a little bit more about these guys. And let's talk a little bit more about the habitat that we are building. And you may have noticed I added a bit of rock work. I wanted the stable itself, the shelter, to be more utilitarian. The habitat, I wanted it to kind of still be somewhat naturalistic, while still fitting into the general area here that we have. So what I did was, of course, made the ground very sandy, very soily, without a lot of grass, so that it fits very closely with what we have so far. And I added a little water pit because these guys love the water and they'll spend a lot of time wallowing there. I added one of these marula trees. They're very nice. They actually become my favorite new tree to be using for bushes. So what I do is I sink the tree down, and that looks like a kind of a really rough bush, and I think it looks quite nice there. So I did that all across the habitat, and I think it turned out really, really nice. Like, I think it really suits the area. It looks like foliage that would naturally be there, and I keep it quite sparse though, because I know these are grazing animals and they would naturally kind of decimate the foliage in their habitat. So that's the reason they I kind of spread out the foliage so that it's not like super dense. And as you can see on screen, I'm kind of working on the path system that is going to be where the viewing area is. So it is a bit elevated, so even if the buffaloes wanted to try and get up there, they can't because it's too high up and they can't really jump that distance. Again, I'm going to try and prioritize the safety of my guests to an extent. And you'll see when I'm going to add a feeding station as well in a bit. But you can also see right now I'm adding in like a little barrier around the outside where the stables are, and I'm going to put down some foliage and stuff like that, just kind of like a gardening element, because of course there are a lot of gaps that need to be filled, and the best way I think to fill a lot of these little gaps are, as you can see, is by putting down some mulch and then adding in some lovely little flowers and stuff like that. And a little cute thing that I did here, which I thought was quite nice, is that I put in flowers all around this exterior kind of planter, but I left the areas where there's a window into the shelter bare, because I imagine the buffaloes from inside the shelter might stick their heads out and munch on the flowers, so that there's a bunch of space where the flowers have just been eaten. I thought that was a really cute idea. Let me know what you guys think. I just wanted to add, little quirks like that to the zoo, where if you were wandering through, you'd just notice it and you'd be like, oh, maybe they should have thought about that before they built, a planter right outside the buffalo shelter. Stuff like that. I think it just adds a bit like a little cute flair to it. Now you can see I'm building the wall around the exterior of the habitat. Again, very similar to the style we've seen in the rest of the petting zoo, the stone brick walls with the wooden trim. With this one, I wanted it to be, I wanted this habitat to not really be super visible from the outside. I added in a couple small windows, but that's it. Otherwise, you would have to really go into the petting zoo to kind of experience these animals, which is kind of what I wanted. I wanted, obviously, for people to really engage with these animals and come into the petting zoo as opposed to watching them from afar. Now you're going to see me start work on these staff areas. You may have noticed, thanks to the positioning of this new habitat and the new shelter, we actually have a little staff corridor that runs kind of between the camel habitat and the buffalo habitat, and that's kind of where I introduce a lot of little staff elements. You'll see me put down like a lot of random things that I imagine the staff would want to use, like some baskets, a couple of water pipes. I will also add a bicycle in there. I imagine the staff might cycle around a bit. So stuff like that, just to give it this feeling of like, okay, the staff use this area, it's definitely more utilitarian. Again, nobody's gonna really, in terms of guests, nobody's really gonna come back here and see it, so I think it looks pretty good. And of course I'm going to add in some doors which are like staff only. I'll eventually add some staff only signs. I haven't done that recently, but I will eventually, I guess. And I think it just looks nice. Like I'm getting quite happy with how the petting zoo looks. There's a few things I want to change. One thing I want to change is that if you watch my previous episode, I put down this big pool of water for the llamas, and the more I look at it, the more I'm just like, that just doesn't fit the area. It feels a bit weird. Like, it doesn't feel like it would be in an area which is so open to guests. And it just doesn't feel like the llamas would enjoy it in the first place. I always thought like, okay, yeah, it'd be good for llamas who want to cool off from the heat. But then I'm like, would they really want to? Or would it just like completely bog down their fur, stuff like that. So I might change that out, maybe introduce like another thing. Also, I need to reintroduce the peafowl, which are waiting in the trade center, so maybe that's how we'll do that. So I'm not 100% sure. Let me know if you have suggestions in the comments. Let me know if you think it is a good idea to, maybe get rid of that llama pool. Maybe you have a suggestion for what we can add instead. But yeah, let me know in the comments down below. More than happy to hear you out. And here I'm just adding a few more staff props. I imagine these are just things they leave around the side that they want to like put into the habitat later, but as of right now they just have just left them off to the side where the guests can't see them. Here I'm trying to find some good plants to just add in as well. And as you can see, one thing I like to do, and someone pointed this out in the last episode, is that I really enjoy making the animal enrichment items part of the habitat. And I mean that in a way like, you may have noticed I used that hanging feeder and I put it like into the planter so it looks like it's built into the shelter. I think that looks really good. Same goes for the scratching posts. I did this with the llama habitat. Essentially I just used the scratching post and I put it at essentially overlapping a beam of the shelter so that it looks like, oh okay, so they built in the scratching post into the habitat, and that just looks really good in my opinion. I think it just kind of gives you this idea that, oh, this was thought out from the beginning, it's not like some separate item that was just dropped in here. So yeah, I think that works out pretty well. And once again, going with the theme of this being an older part of the zoo, I think the walls really help sell that idea. Like, this may have been a habitat for a much less suitable animal at one point, maybe a hippo or something. And in recent times, the zoo has been like, okay, we're going to do better. These habitats are still pretty decent, but we're going to use them for more suitable animals. So that's what eventually happened. And here you can see me putting down some fencing around the path. I actually really like this path. So if you guys don't know, this path is actually the natural terrain path. So if you put it flat on the ground, there's no path texture, it just shows you the terrain underneath. But if you elevate it, you get this lovely kind of sandy look to it, and I really like it. It's very subtle, very plain, but I think it worked pretty well. Now what you see me do is I've introduced some rocks that are somewhat elevated, so the buffalo can actually walk up towards where the fence is, and right now you can see me introduce the feeding station. So the feeding station is a simple table where we're going to be introducing some fruit, some veg, things that buffalo would like to eat, and there will be a zookeeper standing here and the guest would come up to the zookeeper and be like, yo, can I feed the buffaloes? And the zookeeper would be like, yeah, sure. And the zookeeper would give you like a banana or something, and you can hold it out above the fence and give it to the buffalo. So the buffalo would just come up and, nom nom nom. Like I said, even though buffaloes are pretty aggressive, I feel like this layout would work because for the most part, I think if they're in a habitat like this, they are accustomed to people, they wouldn't necessarily want to be aggressive, and of course because they are separated enough that they can't actually do much harm. So I think that really helps that the security of the area. Now, what am I doing here? Oh, that's just me basically attempting to see whether the water of the llama habitat was decent. There's not much else I can talk about with the llama habitat, but soon you're going to see me. Yeah, okay, now I'm going to start working on the bottom section of this area. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to introduce an animal handling station. So I wanted to put down a little station where there would be a zookeeper there, and there would be a small exhibit animal as well. So for example, a boa or a python, maybe an iguana. And essentially what you could do is you could come down there, the zookeeper will kind of tell you a bit about the animal and let you handle it for a bit. So big snakes are really good for this. A lot of zoos do it with ball pythons, a lot of zoos do it with boa constrictors. So that's what we got here. I'm going to put down an exhibit for a boa constrictor. Obviously we do have one in the reptile house. I just imagine this is kind of a temporary housing for it whenever it's out on handling days. And people could just come up here and have a little bit of a more close, more intimate experience with the animal. I think stations like this are really great because, for example, animals like a boa, when you get them used to handling, like you really handle them all the time, get them really used to the feeling, they're not going to get that stressed anymore, and then you can really give people the opportunity to engage with an animal that they otherwise might not have ever seen before. And this is really good for a lot of people to overcome their fears, because a lot of people are really afraid of animals like snakes, and when you handle them up close, when you see them as animals and as living creatures that are really quite beautiful, it really helps you understand that these are not animals you have to be afraid of. These are creatures that are, quite amazing, and I love it when zoos do these experiences because I think it really does help people. And of course, this is not like putting down people with these phobias. Sometimes that is just what it is a phobia and it's hard to overcome. So I'm not like putting you down for that. It is just, I think situations like these with animal handling sessions really help people with these kind of phobias just kind of learn about these creatures really and appreciate them for what they are. And I think that's quite cool really. Anyways, you're going to see me kind of make the exhibit kind of fit into the theme of this area. So I eventually kind of give up on giving it a roof. I just give it a flat slate roof, which I think looks pretty decent. And here you're going to actually see me do something quite new. Well, it's not really new, it's just basically I put down some of those fabric pieces that I use for a lot of the canopies that you've seen me do. But instead of the usual green and orange and the kind of warm grey colour I've been using, I decided to go for purple. And I really liked it. Like, I realized that the zoo's been missing like reds and purples a lot, and blues. We've been using the green and orange and I think those look great, but I think I want to start expanding the color palette a little bit to really include these purple colors because they're so vibrant, yet they kind of fit quite well with the colors we already have going with the zoo. And that was like, when I started the zoo, one of the main concerns I had was I didn't want to get into that, fall into that pit where everything just looks super similar, which is kind of the issue I had with one of my previous zoos, which was Boomy Reptile Sanctuary. The whole zoo looks super monotonous. Like, I like the zoo, but it really does look like it's all like the same color, everything just looks really quite flat. Like, I want these really bright pops of colors, and that's what I'm going to try and do more of. So if you see little things in the park changing where I add in a few new colors, that's why. I'm just going to kind of go around and add a few more of these. And I think it really helps bring the zoo to life a little bit more. Now we're kind of coming up to the end of the episode now. We're pretty much just adding in a few little planters and just tidying things up a little bit, adding a few picnic tables. But otherwise that's pretty much it. there's a couple things I just want to talk about before we finish up, and that is essentially going back to what I started with, of course, and kind of petitioning for causes relating to the videos I do. I do like to keep things quite positive on my channel. I don't, I want this to be a place you can come and just chill out, watch me build a zoo, and have a really enjoyable time. But, with the world the way it is, we gotta fight for the things we believe in, right? There's a lot of things going on in the world, and, the zoos are a cause I think that we can all relate to very well, and that's kind of why I'm putting that down. And of course, if you follow me on Twitter, I've been kind of tweeting about all sorts of things relating to all sorts of other causes that I believe in very strongly. For example, the Black Lives Matter movement. That is a huge deal right now in the US, and in fact across the whole world, so I'm very much in support of that. And if you want to see my thoughts on that situation, feel free to check out my Twitter. But yeah, just a little note to fight for the causes you believe in, basically. And specifically in terms of this video, I just want to say, if you can support zoos around the world, be it your local zoos in countries that you've been to, please do so. You don't have to donate if you don't have the money, but sign a petition, share awareness, anything like that. Talk to family members, talk to your friends, say that, zoos are in trouble, and it's really important that we do support them, because especially the good ones, the accredited zoos, they are absolutely a beacon of hope for a lot of animals. They are great for conservation, great for the animals, great for people to learn about these animals. So yeah, that's that. So I really do hope you guys have, learned a little bit more about these animals. Hope you've enjoyed today's episode. A couple final notes. If you want to hang out with like-minded people, share your own zoos, share your own thoughts, please hit up the Discord server. It'll be in the description below. Just feel free to join it. It's really a nice, positive community. We all just kind of hang out, talk about animals and stuff. So feel free to join that. It's a lot of fun. Other than that, like the video, subscribe, the usual stuff. I will be uploading Sannikovland only once a week from now on, just because I want a bit more time to build up things, and it takes away a little bit of that pressure. And you will get a Jurassic World Evolution video on the Wednesdays instead. And perhaps I might even start a new Planet Zoo series, so keep your eye out for that. I have a few ideas that might be pretty cool, so that might be a thing. Wink wink, nudge nudge. Anyways, I just want to say again, guys, thanks so much for watching. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.